Hagmann Hagmann Report for today. It is a terrific Tuesday edition, May 19th, 2015. This is a live broadcast coming to you from the studios of the Hagmann Hagmann Report in Northwest Pennsylvania. I'm Doug Hagmann at the helm with fellow investigator researcher and most importantly my son Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann Hagmann Report, America's premier father-son investigative reporting team. That's right. Our job is to bring you the news that propels the headlines, the news that is twisted and convoluted and hidden amid this funhouse of smoke and mirrors in the carnival we call the corporate media. And the carnival it is. We've got a lot of information to impart to you tonight, some things that you're going to want to pay very close attention to. Time, folks, is indeed getting shorter. We do the headline and news triage so you don't have to. We'd like to thank all the new listeners for checking in from all over the world, and we have many. Thank you so very much. I mean, God bless each and every one of you. Your emails, your letters. We were going through letters today. My goodness. Some of the letters, we're in the process, and I want to make this announcement. Every letter, every card, I don't care if you write a note on a Post-it note, we have kept, and since really day one, and have it in a file. And we are in the process of actually putting them onto a disk, only because when I say that, we're not data mining. What we're doing is we want to make sure that everyone that has written to us is acknowledged, okay? And it's a pretty formidable job when you're talking just two of us here. But it's important. It's important because we in going through these letters, especially some of the older ones, it's amazing that we found the tips that you had sent to us are more relevant today than they were at the time that you sent. Some of the dreams and visions, and people mock and scoff at those, But I got to tell you, some have hit right on the money. It's amazing, and we are doing our best to reach out to each and every one who has touched us, with a note, who has touched us with an email, who has touched us with even sometimes a phone call, on-air phone call, because time is short. And let me just say that again: time is short. More as the program unfolds. Now, for the new listeners, we broadcast live as it stands right now, without the censorship of the internet, Monday through Friday, 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. Our home base on the internet is HagmannandHagmann.com. That's HagmannandHagmann.com. We're simulcast by the Christians United Broadcasting Network. Our home base, of course, at HagmannandHagmann.com. From there, you can access us live. We're in the process of updating the past show page, but if you click on the RSS feed, it'll take you directly to the BTR page. We also have a SoundCloud account. They're smaller files where you can actually, if file size is an issue, and for a lot of people it is, you can download a third. They're reduced by a third, and the quality is still the same. All of our social networking accounts are there on HagmannandHagmann.com. I want to let people know that we ordered today. And we should have by the end of the week, another new batch of bumper stickers, of logos and bumper stickers. Those who have been waiting patiently, and I mean patiently, thank you. We're getting those out to you. If we have to work 24/7, we will. Our website is frozen in time, almost. The reason being, and Joe and I are going to explain this to you. When we say time is short, very concerned. It seems like everyone's focusing on Jade Helm. Jade Helm is not the objective. Jade Helm is the result, or Jade Helm is the consequence of what's taking place behind the curtain. What's taking place behind the curtain is what we're going to be talking about a little bit about tonight. And I think there are going to be a lot of people who are going to be expecting something to happen during the Jade Helm exercises. Will it happen? Perhaps. Yeah, perhaps. But if it doesn't, don't worry. It will. May not happen when you think it does. It may happen a month later. Might happen. It certainly could happen during the Jade Helm. At least, perhaps geographically specific. But I'll tell you this: it will happen in the short term, in the shorter term. When I say it will happen, I'm talking about going from a soft tyranny, which we're under right now, to a clampdown. Don't believe me? Just wait. Not in a good mood tonight, for a lot of reasons. Pretty heavy stuff. Joe came to the studio today. I'll just explain this. Joe came to the studio today, and he said, "Hey, I have an epiphany." No, he didn't. He didn't say, "I have an epiphany." Those are my words. I have an epiphany. Yeah, and he did, and we got to talking. We sat down at the conference table, and the information that he provided, well, stay tuned for that. Let me just say this. Tonight's broadcast, we're proud to say that tonight's broadcast is sponsored by NatureBox. We love NatureBox. They're a great company. It's a great product. NatureBox ships very tasty, guilt-free snacks right to your door. We love them. With over 100 flavors to choose from. They've got brand new flavors. Mini bagels. Oh, you've got to try the mini bagels. Oh, my goodness. I'm sorry, mini bagels. Sorry about that. Mini Belgian waffles. Mini Belgian waffles. I don't know why I said bagels, but mini Belgian waffles. Oh, my goodness. NatureBox, if you're listening, send like a truckload. Mini Belgian waffles. Anyway, Big Island pineapple, all of the fruit medleys. Oh, they're just so good. You'll never get bored of snacking again. Try NatureBox for free. That's right, free. Go to naturebox.com/CFP radio. That's naturebox.com/CFP radio. Or go to hagmanandhagmann.com. Scroll all the way down to the bottom of our website. And on the left-hand side, you click on that, and it'll take you right to our little world at NatureBox. Folks, you've got to try this. You've got to try them. It's the right way to snack. And I got to tell you, it's really a great service, great company, great product. Anyway, getting back to what, and I'm going to bring Joe in here in a second, but he came to the studio and he said, I got to tell you, all of the hours of research, I think I got it. I think I got it, he said. I think I got it. And we proceeded for a period of hours to go through papers that we found that we had printed 2-3 years ago that are no longer available on the internet, and we have a good file system how we keep things sorted. And the more we got into this, the more we realized the time is short. What we're talking about at the core is the New World Order. Well, what's the New World Order? It's a process. What's a big part of the process? Trans-Pacific Partnership. Trans-Pacific Partnership. I'm going to tell you something right now. What Joe has uncovered and what we have developed together at this point is frightening. But Joe, what do you make of this? I mean, as we develop this, Everything, it seems like everything, every law, every executive action, every movement, or every action has led to this moment, from NAFTA to GATT to the North American Union. You know, these are subjects unto themselves, issues unto themselves. However, the ceding of the Internet to a globalist authority by itself, you think, well, it's a story, right? The NDAA, by itself, it's a story. The ceding, or the TPA, which is the Congress saying, go ahead, fast track the TPP, by itself, it's a story, but it's not the entire story. It's a component. All of these are components of the TPP, which is the mechanism by which the New World Order, the one world government, will be implemented. I've never been more convinced of anything in my life than this. After Joe laid out his documentation, I just looked and it's right there. Stuff that's not on the internet right now. It's not. I mean, stuff that you will not find on the internet has been purged from the internet. It's all right there. And you wonder why Congress is walking. You know, that was the biggest problem I had. How is it possible that the Republicans are okay with, you know, ceding their authority to the executive branch when Obama is in the executive branch illegally, I might add, which, by the way, goes back to his placement in the office, in the Oval Office, goes to this very moment. I mean, everything that we've seen over the past 6.5 years, actually 60, 100 years, is leading to this moment, has led to this moment. Now, this is not the end of the road. This is the beginning of the final phase. This is the placing of the capstone on the pyramid. This is the beginning of the end. Does that sound dramatic? Does that sound conspiratorial? Does that sound like, you know, well, I hope it does sound dramatic, because it is dramatic. I mean, Joe, jump in here anytime, man.
Sure. And we worked on some of the historical and some coincidences and associations with laws and actions taken versus what we see unfolding today. The one thing you and I did not get into was the biblical aspect of this.
Right.
Now, we were talking about, NAFTA, GATT, the free trade agreements, and how important these are to understanding the times that we're in. Some of the language that is coming out of these from lawmakers and parts or portions that have been leaked are, and the reason it's secret is because these claims of this partnership or agreement will hand over the sovereignty of the United States government to an international corporation or an international one Supreme Court. You will have no federal protections in our country.
Right.
The Constitution will be null and void. No borders for countries. But they've done this with NAFTA, with GATT, and the TPP is the final. When they solidify and pass that, it will encompass the entire globe. America will have free trade agreements with the entire globe, and all will be subject to the same international authority. Once that agreement is completed, the whole world and all the governments of the world, economies, corporations of each country, will become one. in a sense, equal, following what was laid out in the United Nations Charter.
Let me just stop you right there for a second, because, folks, if you're not familiar with the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or even if you are, just very quickly, all right, TPP involves 11 countries plus the United States, or 12 countries. It does not involve China. Okay, just very quickly, I'm just going to give a kind of a thumbnail sketch and then toss it back to you. Okay, it encompasses 2/3 of the world's economy. Now, some of you might say, "Well, this is old news." I understand. I know this, but a lot of people don't. So bear with me. China is missing on this. This, again, is the final step, the capstone. While our lawmakers are not allowed to see what's in this, or they're allowed to see only parts of it, you've got a group of about 600 corporate advisors who are crafting this, and they're multinational corporations. Okay, Monsanto, for example, Pfizer, Walmart, and so on. Now, as I mentioned, you've got 12 countries, including the U.S. The countries include Australia, Brunei, Canada, Chile, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, New Zealand, Peru, Singapore, and Vietnam. Vietnam is a key aspect of this. This is the most secret trade agreement ever. And this is designed to deliver economic shocks that will result in economic disintegration, supranational currency, a world economy. This is the combination or the amalgamation of Agenda 21 domestically, the 1991 Rio Declaration, and so on. This is the combination, or this is the passage of SOPA and ACTA, which we defeated. This is the reason for Obamacare. This is the reason that the internet was ceded over to a global authority. All right.
Yeah.
And the last thing is, this also has ties to population control and reduction, and it's very distressing. Go ahead, sir.
Now let me read the with NAFTA. There was a publication by the Council on Foreign Relations in February of 2014. 20 years after its implementation, the North America Free Trade Agreement has helped boost interregional trade between Canada, Mexico, and the United States, but has fallen short of generating the jobs and the deeper regional economic integration it advocates promised decades ago have fallen also short. Trade relations were broadened substantially, but U.S. manufacturers lost due to the global competition. And it goes on to explain the impact of NAFTA and the force it played, and how it has really, and this is a CFR publication, how it has really destroyed the manufacturing sector of our country. But what is NAFTA? It's a trilateral free trade deal that came in 1994, signed by Bill Clinton. It is the central thrust of an agreement is to eliminate the tariffs produced by trade among these countries. And it was a gradual implementation of steps, but the deal swept away import tariffs, including agriculture, as a major force. The tariffs were reduced. It implemented intellectual property protections, establishing dispute resolution mechanisms, and set up regional labor and environmental safeguards. But this is where it gets not tricky, but when we hear the word overpopulation, these people think genocide. When we see the UN goals, and I'll read them here.
This is from 1945. Now, this is how long this has been.
There's 8 Millennium Development Goals, and they range from having extreme poverty rates to halting the spread of HIV. The target date when this was implemented was 2015, to have this agreed upon by all world countries, and that these countries would meet the needs of the world's poorest, globalizing everything. And making it international and doing away with any private resources for one specific country, meaning how we have a welfare system now that protects those who are insolvent in the U.S. This is a global welfare program, but the goal, one, is eradicate extreme poverty and hunger. It sounds like a good thing, right? But they don't tell you it's at the expense of eradicating poverty and hunger in one area by creating it in another.
Well, it's. Let me give you an example real quick. Roughly, if for an American worker, 8 hours at minimum wage, roughly $60 is what they're going to walk away with gross. In Vietnam, it's about $2 and $2.25 a day. Okay, $60 a day, U.S. minimum wage, 8 hours versus Vietnam, which is why Vietnam's a key, $2.25 a day. Okay, where do you think that wealth is going, or where do you think that equality is going to come from? It's not going to come from Vietnam. Obviously, it's going to go to Vietnam at the expense of the middle class of the United States and all Western countries. Reason being is they've got to destroy the middle class in order to make this work, and this is all about the destruction of the middle class and the eradication or the destruction of the U.S. dollar. The killing of the U.S. dollar fits in here as well. Go ahead.
Number 2, achieving universal primary education. 3, promoting gender equality and empowerment for women.
Which is why the Supreme Court decision is so important right now, because it will pass and it'll be exported to all the countries across the New World Order that the transgender, homosexual rights part. This is all part of a globalist agenda.
Number 4, reduce child mortality. Number 5, improve maternal health. 6, combat AIDS, HIV, malaria, and other diseases. 7, ensure environmental sustainability. 8, global partnership and development. So
sounds good, though, right?
Right. They have titles that sound as though there would be no objection to these things. But let's get into some of these. Develop a global partnership for development is what? They say to do this, to develop this plan, an open, rule-based, predictable, non-discriminatory trading and financial system must be developed, addressing special needs of the least developed countries, addressing the special needs of landlocked developing countries and small islands, dealing with the debt problem in developing countries, cooperating with pharmaceutical companies, and providing global access to health, making, in cooperation with the private sector, make available benefits of new technologies, especially information and communication technology. And what we have is, bottom line, this Trans-Pacific Partnership dovetails with the United Nations, their charter, and what they want and say they were going to implement. The abolishment of private property.
That's coming.
They want Agenda 21, and that's exactly what is being implemented here, is Agenda 21, and they will, and this is why the TPP is secret. You see the U.S. announced they were going to hand the Internet over to a global international body out of nowhere, right?
And once more, that was a story by itself, and people looked at that with blinders, saying, "Wow, this is." Some people say it's good, and some people say, "No, not good." Either way, it's the story. It's a component of a larger agenda that interconnects with the TPP and the New World Order machinations of the globalists.
Oh, and let's look at some examples like NAFTA. What NAFTA did was they said expanded trade and gave workers in all 3 countries a better work environment, better wages, and more jobs, right? Well, what happened was workers were cut. Living standards were also cut in the United States. Benefits have fallen. The manufacturing sector has been gutted from our nation, and the country is in ruins due to this, because what they have done is allow other countries or corporations to operate in other countries that don't have the same labor laws. Meaning, if you had a company and you had 50 employees and it cost you, we'll just say $1 million to pay your employees in benefits and duties here in the United States, you can move your corporation to Mexico and pay them slave labor wages and not be bound by the laws of the United States. Your headquarters would still be in the United States.
Right.
But what this does also is opens up, as they say, it gives away sovereignty of our government's power to an international system. And this is a key cornerstone of globalization. You cannot have globalization without having the authority to be an international, all-encompassing authority over the globe. It also paved the way for the privatization of public services. We see how the president has taken big swaths of federal land and privatized it, or New York has sold their bridges and tunnels to China. How is this possible that parts of our country, land in our country, is up for grabs to anybody who has enough money, but specifically U.S. citizens can't even go there?
And that's part of the biodiversity project of Agenda 21. And
this is why they're giving away the power of the internet. They're selling infrastructure and most of our country. It is basically going to be fair, even, as they say. America's now going to have to pay their fair share. They're going to be subjugated to international law. Corporations are going to be the ones that are making the money. Everybody else is going to be fighting for scrap that third world countries live in now. That's how the conditions of the whole world will be in. But the collaboration among the globalists and the agenda pushers hammered out this TPP, and they've been in the works for a long time. They know that the economy or economic recovery, the claims of the economic recovery, are bunk due to just look at the job numbers. They say there's 5-point-something% unemployment, but over a third of the people in this country aren't even working. Obviously, that makes no sense. But what they're doing now is entering into a covenant, I would say, is the best way to put it. And this is biblical. And there will be no individual, borders. There will be no if you have a creek in your backyard, it's just as much some taxi driver in Japan as it is yours.
That's right.
All resources are going to be
shared, or
they're going to be privatized to be, I guess you'd say, privatized to be used by the
collective
people for free market, the controllers for profit.
Yeah. To
the highest bidder. That's when I said about the agriculture part of this. The farmers in the U.S. are no longer restricted only to sell to people in the U.S. If there is some rich dictator who wants to pay, $1 million for X amount of, corn, well, it's only going to get $50,000 here. The farmer's obviously going to sell for more money and driving up prices of food all over the place to the highest bidder. But this is the dismantling of our country from within, because you can't have a powerful, independent America and have globalism at the same time. You have to have, we'd be the enforcement or military branch, but this integration is going to destroy living standards and our ability to function the way we used to function. This is the one world government.
the emergence thereof. And for those, I just want to say this.
The audio to play, it's a minute 40 audio. We can play that. Explains a little bit of this. TPP paves the way for one world government.
Okay, before you do that, for those of you saying, well, welcome to the party to us, we've understood this, and we've understood each aspect of this. But what we're saying here tonight is, when you take a few steps back, now you adjust the lens just a little bit, and all of a sudden the lines line up, the dots line up, and we can see now.
And it's not the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It's the implementation of the United Nations Charter and Goals.
There it is.
Tomorrow night we have G. Edward Griffin on, who is the author of The Creature from Jekyll Island, who exposed the Fed and how that came about, as well as The Fitful Master, which is talks about the United Nations takeover. And let me just say, when he comes on tomorrow, I think it's just going to be a fantastic show with some of the questions we have, because this is this TPP is Congress is signing over their authority. They're not allowed to make any changes. It's a living agreement. It includes destroying the value of the U.S. dollar. It includes small arms disarmament of U.S. citizens.
There you go.
It includes relinquishing any type of rights we have, except those given to us by God, but constitutional rights that were protecting us in the U.S. court system. An example would be, you are guilty until you prove yourself innocent in this new global system.
That's right.
Like Lindsey Graham said, the NDAA had to be passed for this to come through.
All of those little
for
things.
National security. The
world
is a battlefield.
Yeah.
That Section 1031 was not in the original NDAA, but the president specifically stated he wanted it in. It states that the world is a battlefield, including the homeland, and a U.S. citizen can be held as an enemy combatant. Lindsey Graham said in a hearing about NDAA, it is a law of the land that a U.S. citizen can be held as an enemy combatant without due process or a lawyer. And then you went on to say, if they want a lawyer, I tell them, shut up. You don't get a lawyer.
And doesn't that match with other countries? You see how things are conforming to a global standard that is not the United States standard, that's not the constitutional republic?
You're right. It's not the constitutional republic. But we are not and have not been a republic for a long time. They reorganized the government as a democracy. Well, and then they took that away and made it into a war power authority type situation, a de facto martial law that we've been living under since then. Some people call it a soft martial law. But let's play this audio.
All right.
TPP, hearing that same scrubble, but the first part of the audio came through fine. I can't fast forward it. I want to see if it picks up on the other side. But what I can do is see if there was a transcript with that, because what this Mexican governor said at the time was about using these trade agreements as a backdoor to universal health care, one world economic system.
Right.
It was about...
Why don't you kill that audio?
Nothing,
unless you're waiting for that.
Nothing pertaining to trade. It was the infrastructure for the vision of the UN founders, as George Bush said, about the New World Order. Today we can see a clear, of a new world order, not the law of the jungle. And when we are successful, and we will be, everybody remembers that. And he goes on to say, to implement the vision of the UN's founders. For what? International peace and security.
And this
what does the Bible says about that? For when that there will be a covenant and a league, which the UN was the League of Nations, and it became the UN after League of Nations really didn't catch on, but it was the same people, same agenda, same goal. The Bible says that there will be a covenant and a one world order in the last days, as there was in the days of Noah. They had one mind and thought nothing but evil continually. It's coming back. And the governments, all these legislative actions, whether by executive order or erroneous votes by Congress or Senate to legalize things that we have didn't understand why they would do such damage in the open to their own country, to their own constituents, which voted for them and put them in those places of power for a reason. And this is basically, bottom line, as we stated, that is not just a trade partnership for businesses and imports and exports. It is a abolishment of U.S. borders and throwing out our federal judicial law.
Well, for perspective, 29 chapters of the TPP, only five, and this is old news, but roughly only 5 deal with trade. So 24 chapters deal with other things, such as immigration. For example, immigration. 3 chapters are super secret. The supernatural economy is another aspect of this. The state laws subject to foreign tribunals. This is, and this explains as well why there was no pushback against the eligibility status for Obama, the citizen of the world. He has been selected to usher this in. Sure, it could have been ushered in under Romney, as you said, Joe.
Right, but you just made a great point. The free trade agreement is not about trade. 29 draft chapters, only 5 deal with traditional trade issues. One chapter provides incentives to offshore jobs to low-wage countries, and many would impose limits on government policies that we rely on in our daily lives for safe food, clean environment, and more. Our domestic, federal, state, local policies would be required to comply with TPP rules, which are international regulations. The TPP would elevate individual foreign firms to equal status with sovereign nations, empowering them to privately enforce new rights and privileges.
So one step could be a company or a country
with as much power, yes, and say in our lives and interests in what we do. Foreign tribunals, or governments would be dragged into foreign tribunals and vice versa, based on, and also the what they could say is what's best for the public. All this protection. Obama talked about it with the healthcare law. The people need this. Everybody should be free to have health coverage, and the UN similar. Everybody has right to a home. Not that these things are bad, but when they're done not by volunteering or as a community effort, but through the barrel of a gun being forced out of your situation in order to put someone else in there under the auspice of fairness. I mean, but this thing is so big and so massive. The United Nations has been working on this since their inception. It is biblical. It's a satanic-driven agenda to, like the World Wide Web is interconnected, they want to physically interconnect the world. And people in Singapore will be subjected to the same exact laws and standards as people in the United States.
Yep.
The corporations, the money interests, are the only ones that will be able to dictate, what is what. So the people who want the country or the world's population to be reduced by 75%, the people who want abolishment of Christianity, the people who want world wars, famines, and starvation will be and make money off of those events. Will be the ones dictating and making the laws and enforcing them.
Exactly, and people have to understand.
Sounds fun.
Well, yeah, and what you said, this is so massive.
And the media part, people don't understand that. I mean, this is considering all we just said, the media part is really not important, but the government the international government would be dictating what the public is allowed to listen to or watch, as far as the government deems it appropriate.
Under the so-called fairness doctrine, which would not be called that necessarily. It would fall under different aspects. For example, hate speech. You've got to watch what you say when it comes to homosexuality, or when it comes to Islam, or when it comes to you name it. This is all mechanized within this larger machine, the larger beast. And this is exactly what this is, and this answers the questions. It answers questions like, why no securing of the southern border? Well, the answer, of course, people have given, is the North American Union. Well, that's true, but that's just one cog in the larger machine. People stop at that, and they stop and they say, "Well, it's North American Union." No, well, okay, fine, but you've got to realize that cog is part of a bigger plan, and that bigger plan is being implemented. The imminence of what we're seeing is startling. I want everyone to know, and you see Jade Helm, okay. Jade Helm, people look at that as a story, as an event. Yes, it is all of that, but it's much more than that, and it's integral to what's taking place behind the curtain. And this is behind the curtain, way behind the curtain. We've got layers of curtains.
Absolutely, yeah, and it is. It's nasty. I mean, it's going to get bad. We are going to see controls and, private property. You have a little pond or lake on your property. Well, guess what? The EPA legally now already owns that. I mean, you're not even allowed technically to use your waterways in your own property anymore. But how will this come about? Will it be a fast process? Will it be a slow process? I've even heard talks of the TPP containing legislation or wording about disarmament and local gun control measures. So is this something that we will see, and will it be implemented, and how will it be implemented? How will it affect our economy? How will it affect our way of life? Well, it's going to be implemented, and the internment and resettlement operations, the NDAA, the putting citizens in camps, well, they need some kind of circumstance, situation, or problem to have the reason to want to do that. Well, when it's announced that, the United States government is no longer in the enforcement branch of crime and overseeing every, thing in the public that is United Nation and an international body, you have no due process any longer, no right to bear arms, no right of free speech, no right of the Fourth Amendment. When those are gone, people are going to riot. When people understand that, or at least when people see that the food in the stores, remember Nathan Leal's dream about standing in line trying to buy like a thing of milk and a loaf of bread and it being $20, $30 some dollars?
Right.
That's what will happen when this is passed, because it will be corporations are going to cater to supply and demand, and this is why we've seen the destabilization for so long in so many areas. Why are some countries, developed greatly, and why are other countries still living like they're in the Stone Age? It has been for a reason.
Right.
And we're gonna all see these things change. And tonight we kind of just scratched the surface, but the true intention of the TPP is to complete the power transfer from America and other individual sovereign nations to a global power, or as the Bible says, for they will give their authority and power to the beast. This is what we're seeing.
And and healthcare fits into this. You see, they had to pass healthcare, the Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. They had to pass it. They had to. Why, Joe? Why?
They had to pass mandatory health care here in America because universal health care is coming, where it will be a right, as they say, housing will be a right, but through the health care, they're going to use what they call new technologies, mobile technologies, which are, RFID chips. That is already the law by 2017 or to 2018 in December. That Class 2, which are RFID implantable radio frequency transponders systems, will have to be used for patient information and identification.
Now, just understand this. Okay, these dates are the target. You're right, they're the target dates. But as we've seen,
they are the dates.
Well,
they have the ability to extend, or
there you go.
They have 1 year flexibility with that. But yes.
Okay. All right. So the reason to fast track is because they're on the timeline.
And think about it like this: if you haven't seen these car insurance commercials, it's the same thing. They have these commercials that they show drivers and how their rates are affected due to other drivers around them. So they tell you to put this little picture thing in your car, and you can pay less for your insurance if it's shown that you're a safer driver.
Right.
They're going to do this with people with these chips. Why should you have to pay for somebody who's a glutton and overweight and does nothing about it? Put this chip inside you, and each person will then be held accountable to themselves, and the group won't have to pay for it. This will be called fairness.
And people will flock to this because of the mental programming, the conditioning, the commercials like Progressive. Yeah, the snapshot.
And this is for the common good.
That's right. And it's for the children. And of course, my question too, and I had this, why would Congress, American Congress, just roll over and cede their authority? You've got when you look at Congress right now with respect to the TPA, the fast tracking for the TPP, it's a mess. If you look at it without understanding the big picture, it looks like a mess, and it looks like, you've got this confusion within the parties. No. Don't let anyone tell you that it's all politics. It's political party. It's partisanship. It's not. It's not about partisanship. Don't let anyone tell you that, because it's bigger than that. It's all planned.
Excuse me. Today there's news about the internet handover of power. GOP wants review of internet governance handover. Obama administration plans to relinquish U.S. control of the internet's architecture to a group of international stakeholders or companies isn't going well on Capitol Hill. Which I don't get why Republicans would be mad about this. They want to hand everything else over and voted to do so. But anyway, Republicans want to review the handover agreement, while members of both parties in California are saying nonprofits that manage the internet addressing system need to do a better job in protecting American copyrights before the president turns the control over. Who's going to be there when something goes wrong? Asked one Republican, Joe Barton of Texas, at a House Energy Commerce hearing last week. I've yet to hear a vaunted multi-stakeholder process come up with the enforcement mechanism. But they go on to say that in 2014, Commerce Department, which manages the contract with the group and Internet Corporation for assignment of names and numbers, said it would surrender the contract to a group of corporate executives, nonprofit Internet experts, and government officials. The handover will occur when? Guess. Dad, guess.
Uh,
Just take a wild guess. what the date is.
Hand over for what?
Just give me a month and a year. The internet, when it's official.
When it's official.
The days you've been hearing about a lot lately.
September of 2015.
Bingo. Interesting, huh?
How did I know that?
That was a while ago. Contract runs out.
Right.
Before that happens, though, the stakeholder group would assume the contract needs to develop a transition plan. No one thinks it will be ready in time. It goes on to say
Except they've already done the transition work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's already been done.
The Commerce says it will require the transition plan to garner support from stakeholders, multi-stakeholder governance models to ensure security and stability of the domain address system and continued openness of Internet. But Republicans are wary, allowing foreign governments, especially those that restrict Internet access within their borders, to have a say in Internet governance. They worry that without the U.S. contract in place, foreigners could demand the Internet be placed under control of the United Nations. Advocates for the transition argue current U.S. role is unattainable given the Internet's global nature by allowing stakeholders that are not governments to oversee web. Foreign governments will not be able to stake a claim in. It goes on to say we've entered a process that cannot be reversed. Says Brett Schaefer of the Heritage Foundation. If we try to reverse it, the likely outcome is that we're not going to have the same situation in place going forward. But oversight of ICANN is going to be taken over by the ITU, the United Nations Telecommunication Agency.
That's right. And think of it this way, all right? When people say, well, we can't reverse it, or it's, the Leviathan it's too big to really stop. Any complex machine that has a bunch of little gears and cogs and wheels that are turning. Think of the sabot, which is short for sabotage. Think of throwing the wooden clog into one of the gears and the damage it can do. And that, of course, can break down the entire machine, or it can break down part of the machine. It's our job, by exposing this, to throw our clogs into the cogs of this complex machine that's working its way into this new world order. Can we stop it? Probably not. Can we delay it? Yeah. Can we throw our clog in there? Yeah. And do we intend to? Absolutely. For those listening, because you see, what's at stake here is our very existence as our children and their children. And the longer we can keep throwing our clogs in there, the better chance that we have to have people, saved, bring people, make people aware, and the normalcy of the day. The children, imagine your child. You looking at if you're a mom, imagine yourself looking out the kitchen window at the swing set and seeing your child on the swing, the innocence there. Doesn't your daughter, your son deserve another day? Imagine that person who's just a day or two or three or five away from dedicating his life or her life being saved. Doesn't that person deserve that chance? Absolutely. And isn't it our job to see that happens as Christians? Yeah, it is. It's not about teaching prosperity. No. It's about saving the lives and allowing your children and grandchildren to have one more day of normalcy, to grow into a mature adult, to accept the teachings. That's what it's about. And there will be fatalities in this. I guarantee you there will be fatalities. When I say that, I mean excuse me, those people who are exposing this and throwing their clogs into the cogs and the gears in the machine, yeah, they're going to be picked off and picked out and thrown into camps, and people scoff and laugh and say, "Oh, yeah, camps." No, that's going to happen. It's going to happen, and you know what? People will cheer like they did for the arrest of the Boston bomber. They cheered, of course, for the arrest, but what they, what's odd about that is they cheered as their rights were being taken away. Their clapping overshadowed was louder than the engines of the MRAPs, and that's what's going to happen here.
Absolutely.
This is folks. We cannot stress this enough.
Yeah, it is. It is not going to go nicely. It is not going to be smooth. It is not going to be comfortable. It is not going to be easy. The mindset of most Americans hopefully will change, because the current mindset of American exceptionalism, our government loves us, would never do anything to us.
It can't happen here.
We're invincible. Our economy's invincible, our infrastructure's invincible, our military's invincible, our way of life is invincible. Those people are going to be in for a rude awakening. The ones that were so vehement about calling everybody a conspiracy theorist who had any idea, theory, or proof that was different from what they have been brainwashed to believe in. It's going to be crazy. I mean, just imagine. Not only are people going to have nothing, but they're going to understand that their whole world is going to just collapse. Their whole comfort level zone and way of life, it's going to be destroyed. They'll feel like their life is over, and they'll have nothing to live for. Most won't even try to survive. They'll just be losing their mind. And the most that will want to survive don't know how, nor have the ability to do so.
Yeah, it's this is pretty
all
deep.
This, and at the same time, a battle for your soul will be, is already and has been going on forever, but the line will be drawn in the sand and will be made to pick a side. Nobody will be able to escape that.
That's right, and we need to get right, get straight, get mentally prepared, and we need to understand what's happening, the bits and pieces, not the sound bites you hear on Fox or CNN, MSNBC, CBS, ABC, NBC, no, or reading the Post, Times, whatever, not the sound bites or little paragraphs. You need the bigger picture to understand the depth, the depravity, the severity, the imminence of what's taking place, and why, and who. It helps because you just need to understand this, understand where we are in this game, or it's not a game, but in this process. Yeah, it's
Hey, keep talking there for a second. I'm trying to do something. I'm trying to stand ready.
All right.
And,
but once more, and just understand, as we look back in history, and this is why history is so important. We look back at NAFTA. We look back at GATT. We look back at Agenda 21, the Rio Declaration. We look back at Common Core. We look back at the various components, NDAA, healthcare, the Food Safety Modernization Act, the Treaty of American States. We look back at the militarization of local police departments. Now we see Obama saying, backing off of that, of course, with exception. You can read the headlines. You can read each story, each account, and look at it and say, okay, I think I get that. I think I understand that. But the problem here is these are part. Each one is a cog. Each one is a gear. Each one is a wheel in this moving machine. And this machine, not only are the gears moving, but the entire apparatus is moving toward this global governance. And one of the things too you might ask is, well, Congress, how can 500 plus people, 535 people, how can they possibly all together, agree to cede their authority and to go along with this, ultimately go along with this? Now, I'm not saying that you've got willing participants. All of them are not willing. Well, that's where the mob / enforcement comes in. The mob rule comes in. The Chicago way. And I say it could be the New York way or the Las Vegas way. But applicably, it's the Chicago way. And now, we're not saying that we discovered anything new, obviously. TPP is not new, NAFTA, GATT, and so on, not new. We haven't discovered anything new. All we've done is dug deep enough to find that, that common vein of water, if you will. If you're digging for a well, and you might have 10 wells on an expansive piece of property, and you dig down far enough, and all of a sudden, you dig down deep enough in all 10 wells, and all of a sudden you're into that common vein. What we're saying is, look, we have found the commonality behind this that would explain all of this. And the people on the news that are relatively well respected are either complicit or ignorant.
Complicit.
No, you're probably correct.
Somebody would have figured it out or talked about it by now.
Well, I picture, for example, a talking head behind the camera that reads what they're told to read without thinking, and then they go home and have ice cream and watch The Bachelor or whatever television program is on, if that's even a program or whatever. But anyway. The investigative reporters are few and far between.
With that, let's go to our break. Back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of the Hagmann Hagmann Report this Tuesday, May 19th, 2015. We are joined by Mr. Stan Deyo, who is our guest every Tuesday. His website is standeyo.com. Go to the site, bookmark it, as you can find all his books, some news, his upcoming appearances, and a whole bunch of information that are pertinent to the times that we live in. Stan, it's good to have you back on. How has your week been?
Oh, busy. A lot of things happening. And I'm sharing a few of those that I've discovered here tonight. Really interesting stuff.
I see you put a link into the Skype box, and I opened it up here, and it's like a 3D universe or solar system.
I wanted to share that with you and with the people listening, because it's an incredible way for us to look at the solar system in real time and spin it around. Well, I want to say real time, live, so that you can 3D spin it and look at each planet, different angles for the whole solar system, zoom in onto the surfaces of the planets and stuff like that. But today, I will be using some images from that program that I've put onto the website there on our show images page at standeyo.com, because I think it's the way that I'm developing here that will be fairly important as far as forecasting Richter 8 earthquakes and above where the Earth is positioned relative to, say, Saturn and Jupiter. It was a research project that was done back in the early 50s by RCA, and I just happened to remember about it when I saw this program and started plotting things. And anyway, I'll talk about that in detail in a minute and and there's some things people can download that I've produced as a PDF and graphs and stuff to go with that. We may be seeing a big earthquake soon.
Oh, and from what I've heard of people's assumptions and opinions is around California, San Francisco. Is that what you're talking about, or is it something different?
Yeah, it is. Actually, earlier, well, probably over the weekend, I got an email from a fellow and his wife over in California who had heard the same things you're talking about, the rumors that the big one was going to hit California. Now, because they wanted to take a vacation and get out of the state if it's going to hit anytime soon. Now, at first I told them don't worry about it, and then I got all this program that one of the guys that was talking about the quake coming used online to see if his figures or his assumptions were correct. So I looked at it and I thought, and I played around for a number of hours with it, and I realized that maybe I told those folks not to worry about it incorrectly, because it does appear that there is an alignment in progress right now that has been very common, though not every time, but very common in Richter 7.9 and above earthquakes over the last, since 1981, I think that would be it. So it's about over the last 34, 35 years that I've plotted. So I'm telling you, if you're listening tonight, those folks in California, we're still in that window. It's not positive, not absolute, but I thank you for emailing me about that, and it may have given us a way to anticipate the zones, the times when we might see big earthquakes if we're still here, and that's a big if at this point.
Well,
it has to do with.
Interesting.
Sorry, go on.
No, that's just interesting. We see such a huge increase in the volcanic activity, and we've seen some, spikes in earthquake activity as well, indicating the shifting of the Earth's crust and changing times that we're in. And a big earthquake at this time in the U.S. would not surprise me a bit. I mean, at the rate we see the environment around us changing.
For the last 11 years, we've seen a significant increase in earthquakes that were 7.9 or greater. Now, they haven't happened in California. They've been, over in Indonesia and other places in South America, but we're still expecting something to happen on our west coast because the small earthquakes we've had, like between Richter 5 and 6.2, well, relatively small, on the Juan de Fuca plate in the last 7 days is showing increased energy releases by seismic activity at the same time that there's a submarine volcano going off in the Juan de Fuca plate, indicating to me that there's a fracture forming and energy is releasing along the west coast there. And when you see this planetary alignment that I've put up there, if you go to the show images page, the second row right in the middle, there are a bunch of planetary alignments snapshots I've taken to show you where the planets were, where Earth was relative to Saturn and Jupiter and that kind of stuff. You can look at it without any question. You can see where everything is. And I've put on each of these pictures the Richter scale earthquake that occurred at that alignment time on that date and where it occurred here on the planet. So you can make up your own mind. This is the early stages of me developing some sort of a way to tell us to look out for big earthquakes somewhere on the planet where the stress is building up. And at this particular time, it looks like, it could be interesting around California and up to Oregon, Washington, and the Juan de Fuca plate area offshore. People can look at this and see what I saw in the last few days and try to see if you see the same pattern there. In fact, I've got a list of, it's like a PDF file, but it's a list of all the earthquakes that are 7.0 and above since May of 1981. It tells you where it occurred, what time it occurred, what depth it was, what magnitude it was. And you can just go up to the website there, to that show images page. It's in the fourth row, first image. Click on that. It'll download a PDF file for you. And I've also highlighted various strengths of earthquakes in blue or in red. The red ones being 7.9 above, and the blue ones being 7.5 up to 7.9. And I started another study once I saw this data. I thought, all right, let's look at what month of the year these big earthquakes over 7.8 occur in the last, say, 11 years. And that's on the third row of our show images page, the first image. And it's a graph. And that graph, when you click on it, it'll show you the number of these larger than 7.8 earthquakes that have occurred between 2004 and 2015. And it shows you the month in which they occurred. Now, it tells us that April, May, in the last 11 years has been exceptionally high period of time to expect these big earthquakes. And where are we now? In May, the middle of May. Now, after May, things drop off, and we don't see another peak in these large earthquakes until around September, and then it drops off again in October, and then we see elevated levels of that in November and December. But by far, in the last 11 years, the majority of the big earthquakes have occurred in April and May. No matter where you're looking on the planet, I'm saying wherever they are, it's in that month, which I find rather unusual. And on that same row, on the right-hand side, there's another graph I made showing all the earthquakes above 7, Richter 7, from 1981 to May 19th today. Now, you'll see some zones that are pinkish and then more reddish as the magnitudes of the earthquakes increase. And it will leave no doubt in your mind when you look at the plot there that from 2004 onward, we've been seeing a lot more Richter 8s and a few Richter 9s. I think about 3, 4 of those, over 8.5 anyway, and 1, 2 Richter 9s. But anyway, look at that. You'll see, just like biblical prophecy said, earthquakes in diverse places. But these kind of earthquakes, everybody knows about. I mean, the news flashes it and people feel it for hundreds of miles away. Anyway, that's a good graph to look at and understand where we are in the prophetic timetable, in my opinion, anyway. And in between those two images, I've got another PDF that was a file that was written by Pastor Riley, May 16th of this year. And he said, share this with folks on the internet. I had a look at it and I thought, wow, what is awaiting mankind is unbelievable. You know, and it's scriptural analysis plus what's going to happen to volcanoes and the after effect of the ash and that kind of stuff. I found it riveting reading. It's only about 7 pages, but by golly, it's well done. And Pastor Riley, if you do get to hear this, thank you for sending that out to everyone. Anyway, that's something we need to consider. Now we're here at the almost at the end of the Shavuot period for counting the Omer and the first fruits thing, the festival. We're going to come to an end of that time around May 23rd to 25th, depending on where you are on the planet, you know, for various dating things on it. But if we're going to be taken away at the beginning of the 7-year tribulation, and we're going to be taken away, say, at the same time that a big earthquake strikes the planet, we might be seeing an earthquake occur very soon. And with these trumpets that have been blowing, everybody's been talking about, you know, that trumpet sound in the sky, we may be actually about to be raptured out of this place. I mean, there's just so many things pointing to it in geophysics and strange happenings that I can't think that we are there.
The timing of these convergence of events can't be dismissed. September is a month that everybody keeps talking about, whether it has to do with economic conditions, military exercises, from the anniversary of the United Nations or Israel becoming a nation to the Pope visiting the last blood moon. There are secular and spiritual implications all tied around this time period. Now, we see this stuff happening. We know what the scriptures say. My father and I, before the second hour, we're talking about the Trans-Pacific Partnership and this last push to finalize the UN's charter as being the law of the world, with the authority being held internationally by the United Nations. It's that, and that's the one world, government system that was once, like, before the days of Noah, and that will come again. So all these things are happening. As far as these strange sounds in the sky, Stan, there are lots of reports lately of these sounds being heard. They were being reported in 2013 a lot, and they kind of tapered off or went away. Now there's a huge influx of these again. Any ideas what that could be? Is there any earthly explanation? Are we hearing, the Earth shift underneath? Are we hearing the magnetosphere being weakened? What could these be, if you wanted to do it from a scientific perspective?
Well, from like geophysics, I would say that there are a couple of things that we could consider. First one being when, if you remember, when Moses went up the mountain Sinai to talk to God for that 40-day period, when he went up there, the scripture says, and the mountain trumpeted, made a trumpeting sound, and of course there was fire and smoke and everything falling off the top of the mountain, which indicates a volcanic activity of a kind that is through an already formed pipe or vent for the volcanic cone. And if it's already done it before and then cooled off, years or centuries or whatever, and then it starts to activate again, as the magma slides up through the already cooled magma chamber, it will sometimes, it's like rubbing glass with rubber, it will catch and vibrate, and it will vibrate and make a sound, in this case like a trumpet, because it's such a large tunnel, straight down into the earth inside of a volcano. Now, since they called it a trumpeting mountain, or the mountain trumpeted, that's what the term they used for when the volcano made that noise. Now, that might be what we're hearing now, because there is an increase in volcanic activity across the planet and earthquake activity. A lot of them go together. And we have seen in Hawaii that they're starting to realize that a lot of the little earthquakes they're getting are not tectonic plate problems, because there's not a tectonic plate there, but they are more like magma movements underneath the Hawaiian Islands that are creating these small earthquakes. And we know from analyzing the statistics from the past that when you're going to have a large volcanic eruption, or several, that preceding that you will see several series or flurries of small earthquakes as the magma moves up and gets ready to blow out through the top of the volcano. Now, I don't know that that's coming to a head, this week or this month or anything like that, but the earthquakes are there, and the islanders are certainly paying attention to that. But back to the trumpeting sound. There may be something else causing that. It's a low frequency, probably under about 800 cycles per second in the main part of it. And this could be due to variations in the Schumann resonance factor, which, the Schumann resonance frequency has been lowering here on the planet. It's been changing, which is, it's been stable for some time, but it's now changing. And there may be some sort of a resonant cavity set up between the ionosphere and the surface of the Earth that is vibrated by this change. It's not at the same frequency by any means, but there might be something to that. The sounds that people are talking about, these are unusual. I don't know that we've seen those in history. And the fact that they do sound somewhat like a kind of a mournful, woeful trumpeting sound might be what John, that wrote the book of the Revelation, heard when it was revealed to him, was the trumpeting sound. And when the revelation was made to John, it said, okay, when this trumpet blows, then such and such will happen, and that will happen. Now, you said there was something that blew, and we know this, back in 2013, we started getting reports of these sounds, then these trumpeting sounds, and then it died off. And now here we are a couple of years later and starting again. So is this a second series of trumpets? I don't know. There's something to pay attention to because it is new and unique, and it does sound like a trumpet, which the prophets did speak of. Whether it's a burning mountain doing it or what, I don't know.
It's interesting. You mentioned the Schumann resonance frequency. I've been looking into that a lot, and Stan, I want to ask you about that because that seems to be increasing, as you indicated. And
did I say increasing or decreasing?
I thought you said increasing. At least the reports I've been reading, it seems like the Schumann. Which is it, increasing or decreasing? The Schumann resonance frequency.
I might have actually misspoke. I think it is increasing according to the news reports, but I think I said decreasing, but I meant to say increasing.
Right.
But
yeah,
it is changing. Yeah.
Well, and that's I've had actually a couple of emails today people wanting to ask you about that particular frequency and how that affects. From a physics point of view, how that affects time, or how that could affect time, given the fact that, with the increase in the resonance, what's the relationship between the harmonics of Earth, the heartbeat, if you will, of Earth? And I don't want to sound New Age by any stretch of the imagination, but with the framework of time as we know it.
Say that again. Ask that again.
Well, okay. With the Schumann resonance frequency, we know that the Earth itself has this frequency. I mean, am I understanding this correctly? For example, what is it? 7.83 is the average, or we know that since 1980, since the U.S. military and the scientists began keeping track of the Schumann resonance frequency, we know that it's been on the rise. Okay, at least that's what's being reported. It's significantly on the rise. Now, having said that, does that not affect when people say, "Boy, it seems like time is so fast"? Isn't there a direct correlation between the resonance frequency and the time, and the measurement of time?
Well, it would have to be, Doug. It would have to be something that affects our brain waves rather than our ears, because the Schumann resonant frequencies are electromagnetic, okay, and they're very low, like you're saying, like between 7 and 8 cycles per second. But you wouldn't hear that with your ears. You would have to hear it in your electromagnetic systems in your brain if it were a direct connection to that. I cannot understand why we're having audible trumpet sounds that people are hearing through their ears, and you can record it. That tells you it's not electromagnetic. It's physical vibrations in the atmosphere. That tells us that it's something else, not exactly Schumann resonance connected. But now, your question about whether it alters time or not, it might alter a person's perception of time. It would be interesting to see if people that are, say, under the age of 20, teenagers, if they feel that things are accelerating, events are happening quicker. Normally, that's a symptom of old age, and we look back and, another year's gone like a week.
Right.
But to the young people, if they're feeling that accelerated event scale, that would be something that we could say, well, okay, maybe it is something to do with Schumann resonance. It does affect every living thing in some ways, but I don't know how it affects our perception of time.
Okay, and that I think from the scientific reports that I read, and again, a couple of emailers or a couple of people sent emails saying, in fact, I've got a report somewhere that you're right. It is the perception of time, and there's an alteration based on the frequency, which well, I'm not sure of the relevance, except to say that time is short. So, or time seems to be, getting short. That with the physical Earth changes as well. But the report I saw, and I don't have it right handy here, is that it's almost becoming hard to measure. And I'm not the resonance frequency. Does that make sense? It's kind of like trying to measure like a slippery balloon in a with a slippery yardstick.
That is a good analogy. Yeah. You see, the mean or average frequency is, as I say, somewhere around closer to 8 cycles per second, but there are other peak frequencies, like bandwidths that occur within the Schumann resonance frequencies. It goes up to as high as like 60 cycles a second, which is where our electricity in our homes is run at here in the United States anyway, and it go down as low as 3 cycles a second. So in between those two bands or band limits, there are other nodes, typically or historically, but those are starting to wander and become a bit muddy. They're overlapping and not becoming as distinct as they were. There was a question raised by one of your listeners, which I put a graphic up on the show images page on the second row, first graphic. It's wanted to know about the differences the effects make between a magnetic pole shift and a rotational pole shift of the Earth, whether they, are the same, what effects they would have. And I'm thinking that the shift of our magnetic poles may have something to do with this alteration of the Schumann resonance frequencies and the nodal peaks in between the extremes of it, because we do know that our North Pole is splitting into two North Poles, and the South Pole is running behind that. It's not quite as obvious, but it is starting to separate, and this is a dead giveaway to a magnetic pole shift in the Earth. Now, that's saying that the inside of the Earth, for the spinning conductive magma inner core, it's spinning at a different angle to our orbit than our planet's surface is spinning. So in other words, the surface of the Earth is spinning at a slightly different angle by 10 degrees compared to the spinning of our magnetic core, which generates the North and South Pole. Now, we've never kind of witnessed a magnetic pole shift. As humans, we can look at the effects of it in rocks and grains of fired clay and stuff like that over thousands of years and get an idea, how long it took and where it occurred. But we've never had it occur when we had civilization and technology at the level we are now. So we have no idea what's going to happen. As it progresses, it certainly is going to weaken the ionosphere, which, is a major factor of the Schumann resonance cavity. If you weaken the ionosphere, then the Schumann resonance is going to go all over the place, and it's happening. Right. If you have that occur, it's going to induce currents, long-term currents, very low-frequency stuff, throughout the entire planet and all living things. Now, that's not going to cause the rotational axis of the planet to invert. Something else may do that. Certainly they are loosely connected, the core and the surface. So if the core is changing its polarity and spins inside, it may affect our wobble, like Chandler's wobble and our tilt at 23.5 degrees from the ecliptic plane. It may affect all of those things. If they occur fast enough in our rotational axis of the surface of the planet, it could cause the oceans to slosh, to slosh up onto the land this way and that way, depending upon how the changes occur and how rapidly they occur. I can't, what the listener asked it's a difficult thing to predict accurately. We can kind of guess, and I hope that he appreciates the difficulty of the question he asked me to.
We had some discussion last night, and I think that the questions were born from last night's discussion about the Schumann resonance frequency and about the time aspect, and the dimensional physics, the quantum physics aspect, and yeah. So I mean, I think that it's a difficult subject and difficult question, and the other question from another listener about this, again, stemming from last night, about CERN. Could CERN have anything to do with altering such frequencies, or anything at all to do with that, based on the speed, speeding up and the collateral? I'll say collateral damage. Those are my words.
Well, I don't know, Doug. The magnetic coils that drive the CERN certainly do chew up a lot of energy to move those little, protons around in the circle. The energy that actually is released when they have the two colliding beams strike each other, as we've discussed before, is like about the energy of, 12 or 15 flying mosquitoes. I mean, that's not a lot of energy in that. But it's the field that is required to accelerate and separate those protons and then collide them. It's the field that generates a lot of magnetic energy that could affect the local magnetic fields in Europe. Now, because the strength of a magnetic field, even at CERN, decreases on the square of the distance, it means it rapidly weakens the further away from it you get. To have that effect to the core of the planet, probably not enough energy there to do that. To have it affect the ionosphere, well, that might be different, because it might be affecting the telluric currents, or the earth currents of electricity that flow just, in the surface of the earth under our feet. Now, with that effect, that may influence the ionosphere and, interact with the changing magnetic pole location, with the inversion of the poles. I feel CERN is not as powerful as people think. It is powerful locally and local events, and possibly, just possibly, it might interact with these telluric currents. But again, it's kind of one of those things that you scratch your head about. I don't know.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, it's okay. All right.
Well, look, the leading physicists in the world are all kind of at odds with each other about the effects of the tests they're doing and the field coils and all that. I mean, if they can't agree, what hope have we got?
Well, there's a lot of disagreement with respect to that. And I promised John I'd ask this question. John from Northern California, Sacramento, wanting to know this question. This is kind of out of left field. I promised that I'd ask you this question. You had spoken before of dimensions, of various dimensions, earthly dimensions around us. The question is this, and this is something that I had a conversation with another individual, and I thought it was pretty interesting. Again, out of left field, the detonation of an atomic weapon. Does that have, in your experience as a physicist, does that do anything interdimensionally? And that's the question itself is, and I probably should have forwarded this to you because it's like half a page. But the detonation of an atomic weapon, does that render or rend, I should say, does that have the potential to rend through dimensions, tear through dimensions?
Interesting question. I don't know. I mean,
okay.
The concept, mathematical concept of parallel universes is so relatively new after the post-Einstein period that there are a number of different models for brain, BRANE universes, and brain membranes, and how universes touch or surround each other. From my viewpoint, I subscribe to the concentric universe theory, where if one universe encloses another, encloses another, encloses another. There are levels, but all around us, and that we share the same space, but at different times. And that's going back to what Einstein had postulated in one of his letters, that the universes actually pass through each other, and the distance between atoms increases as they separate apart, get bigger, as they condense back down to a tighter formation. We pass through each other, all of our atoms, and we never know we pass through each other in this kind of like a trans-dimensional gravitational field. And this explains why we have some of the scriptures talking about a veil between God's world and ours, and the world beneath us, the universe beneath us, in energy density. It's just,
okay.
I don't know whether a nuclear device explosion would interfere with the universes expanding and contracting around each other concentrically. I don't know.
All right. That sounds
I've
good.
got a lot of I don't knows tonight. Sorry about that.
Well, no, it's interesting because it's. I got to tell you, some of the questions from the listeners, and I got this question 2 weeks ago, and this is the final, really from left field question. Wanting to know from your research, for example, the Ark of the Covenant. This email, hang on a second here. It's right here. Okay. Okay. Catherine wanted to know about your research of the Ark. If you've researched the Ark of the Covenant, the construction of the Ark of the Covenant, is it conducive to any type of she writes electromagnetic and or radio wave, receptive wave, the construction of it, using the metals and the exact specifications? Again, a left field question, but again, I promised I'd ask.
All right. Well, it's something that certainly I've given a great deal of time and thought to over the years. With what we have as far as an official, in English and in Hebrew too, I guess, description of how to make the Ark of the Covenant, the main thing about it that I see as a device is that it's a type of spherical capacitor, even though it's a rectangular box. It's the inside of it is coated with gold, gold beaten thin as a layer, and the wood of it is an oily insulating wood, acacia wood. Now the outside of it is coated in gold as well, but you could take off the lid and then put it back on. How do you keep the two separated, like the inner gold plating versus the outer gold plating? But they are separate, and there's a way that you can do it so that the lid is plated on the top, and it touches the bottom part of the box of the ark and makes electrical contact with the outside. But the wooden part has to touch wood and keep insulation between the inner gold leaf plating and the outer. And the thought is that the two cherubs that are on the top, one of them has a conductive rod that goes down through an insulated wooden portion and touches the inside shell of gold, and so that you have the outer gold plating of the ark separated from the inner gold plating of the ark by an insulator, or a dielectric it's called in physics, so that you can generate a charge in there, and an arc could actually form between the two cherubs on the top of the electric arc could form between those two cherubs as energy is pumped into this semi-spherical, it's a concentric capacitor. Now, technically, in Maxwell's equations, this doesn't happen. You can't have a capacitor out of that, but we've seen that you can in practice. So this device could be tuned, it would be tuned to a particular range of frequencies, electromagnetic, and even possibly, physically audible frequencies, I'm not sure. But when the Ark was returned to Israel after it had been stolen, and it was coming back down to David, King David, there is the tale of the poor men that were out there in the extremities of Israel and saw the Ark was being sent back. Here, take this thing back. We don't want it. It's causing boils and sores and everything in our country. Sorry, we took it. Here, take it back. Well, it was being brought back in by oxen pulling a cart, and it was unstable. Now, it looked like it was going to fall off at one point when they went over a part in the road which made it tilt, and the Ark was going to fall off of the cart. So one man, not wanting to have it damaged, put his hands up to hold it up onto the whatever, the cart or whatever they're pulling it on, and it killed him. Immediately fell down dead. Now, I think it was electrical or electromagnetic, whatever hit him. And when that Ark was then returned, and even before it had been stolen, when the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, once a year would go in and present ask for the forgiveness of sins for the house of Israel, etc. When he would go in, he had to be dressed in a certain way, with certain clothing, metal in various places, and he had to have a rope tied to him that the other priests were outside of the Holy of Holies, on the other side of the curtain, because he went behind the curtain to actually see the Ark. Well, they had this rope around him to be able to pull him out in what they say, if he became too glorified or died, either one. They had to pull him out because no one was going to go in and pull him out. It was certain death. Now, there are, from that, you can see that they were talking about some kind of energy, which is either gravitational or electrogravitational, which would cause the high priest to float if he did it wrong. And in between the cherubim, he would talk to God. Now, whether he saw an image or whether a voice spoke through it, I don't know. But in the Revelation of John, there's a mention of God's Ark, just like the Ark of the Covenant here. Now, when you have one in his place, in his universe, and one in our universe, and he talks through that, that tells you it's some kind of a communicating device which can communicate not only sound, but images and energy, and cause diseases to spread if he wants to kill the enemies of Israel. Or, it's like a channel between the universes, and that is interesting. That's like a little compact thing that CERN is trying to do with a 17-kilometer, loop of stuff and shooting protons to try to make a little black hole and open up a parallel universe. I think the Ark of the Covenant was something that was a direct channel straight to God's universe from ours. So it could be made a lot smaller and still, be effective.
Yeah, and her additional questions as I'm looking at this email, for example, why or has it been, because of the specifications as she understands it, so precise, has it been rebuilt? And the other question is it, and this to me kind of fascinated me here, could possession of the Ark, mere possession, act as a force multiplier? Again, these are the emailer's question or words, not mine. Force multiplier for those, or for anyone who possesses it, which is why it would be perhaps a prized possession of Israel or whatever country would possess it. So, kind of the final two parts to that email
okay.
were. Yeah, so go ahead. Why hasn't it been rebuilt?
Asking. Well, you probably don't need to rebuild if you can get the original, but certainly it could be rebuilt, I think, with the instructions that are in the Midrash or, rabbinical records that are not made public anyway. There are a number of things that are carried by mouth and memory through the Jewish community, through the the priests and then now the rabbis, which prevented it from being given over to the enemy. But in that tale I was telling you about the ark being returned by the enemies of Israel, in that particular case where the man died, that tells you that if the ark is possessed by anyone other than what God wishes, that it's not going to work in their benefit. It's like Indiana Jones in the search for the ark. The German Nazis got it, and it destroyed them in the end because God was not happy that they took his ark, which belonged to Israel. But it didn't destroy Indiana Jones and his lady friend because they didn't look, and they were forgiven for even being there because they were captive. Now the point gets back to this. It might be a force multiplier of what God intends to distribute from it on the earth, but just possession of it, I don't think will entitle any country or beings to use it as a weapon or force multiplier at their will. It is under God's will and under God's control, in my opinion.
Well, that's a neat answer. I mean, it's not okay. So it's right. It's almost a. I hesitate to even try to add to that answer, but it's not the ark itself. It's the. I'll just leave it at that because I
well,
can't.
You can only use it as God. You can only use it as God dictates. God told how to build it so that we can communicate, and He controls the communication. We do not control the Creator. It's
right,
as simple as that.
Yeah, and the question goes, or the reference was also made there to what you spoke about the touching of the ark and death that followed, and of course there was questions there as to what what that was all about or what caused that. And again, I'm paraphrasing here, but bottom line, okay, so that's pretty interesting. It's interesting how people. Our listeners have this sense, to, I mean, very educated to me. I wouldn't even think to ask that question, but wow, okay.
Well, look, remember Vendell Jones, Indy Jones, the real guy that
yes.
was working on the Copper Scrolls? Well, he and I talked at length at times about this Ark of the Covenant, because when he was digging with the helpers there, he was digging in the Qumran, in that cave there near the Wadi Haqiqah. He was looking for what he thought would be the Ark of the Covenant as well, down in the lower levels. And we discussed at length what would be necessary for him and his diggers if they do break into the chamber, if they had broken into the chamber where the Ark was, what safety precautions were needed. And we were looking at things like running a long, conductive wire cable down into the Jordan River, down beneath the slopes there in the Qumran, and grounding the people in the metal suit, etc., for protection from whoever actually got close to it to move it out, or even open up the cavity to look at it to see that they had it. We were thinking about, okay, do we use mirrors? If you break through, use a mirror to look at it. That will reflect a lot of visible light, but maybe not the radiation that would kill you if it's radioactive. There were just a lot of questions that we went through trying to figure out how to protect ourselves from high voltage shock or even microwave that might come from the device. And not only did I talk with Jonesy about it, but I was consulted by Ron Wyatt. He reckoned he'd found it in Jerusalem underneath the Golgotha. And he was trying to figure out how to look at it without dying, or to prove it's there before he turned it over to the Department of Antiquities. So this is a real issue. I mean, once
it's
bitten or twice. Yeah,
wow.
It's a fascinating subject.
Okay, this right now, this question came in since we're talking about this. Robert wants to know. I don't know where you're from, Robert. I'd say, but Robert wants to know. You mentioned the cherubim on the top of the Ark of the Covenant. Are you talking decorative, or are you talking? I mean, is that what? Are they decorative cherubim, or is it? Okay.
Yeah, they're decorative.
Okay.
And I'll tell you some rabbinic lore or legend that is passed down that the rabbi shared with me. But they said that the images, the decorative images of a cherub with wings, one cherub is facing the other on the top with their wings kind of bowed over their head as they look at each other. When the high priest, according to legend, would go in once a year to commune with God there, if he entered and saw that the cherubs were looking at each other straight on, things were good between God and Israel. If their faces turned away from each other, you better hang on because God's not happy. And that's the legend. But, it's possible. I don't know whether it really happened that way or not. The other thing to remember, too, is the ephod that the high priest wore, that rectangular thing with the 12 jewels or 12 stones on it. They had Hebrew letters on them or underneath them. And the legend again says that when the high priest would put questions to God or request, that the answer would come as these things would light up in sequence on his ephod, and it would give him an answer by lighting up these little gemstones. Again, I find that hard unless they were using a very limited alphabet, because the Hebrew alphabet has 26 letters, and how do you distribute those over 12 stones? I know it's like we do with our telephone. We have to punch the key 2 or 3 times, to get A, B, C, or twice to get B, and that kind of stuff. I don't know whether that's the way it was worked, whether one of the jewels would light up, bing, 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 and you'd use the third Hebrew letter under what, I don't know. But
interesting.
Anyway, there's just so many things that we don't know.
Well, I got one more question as we're talking about the Ark of the Covenant. Now, Kara, who's listening outside of Rome, Italy, wants your take on the Holy Grail. I guess this is Relic Night tonight. Holy Relic Night, Holy Grail. Is it a chalice, or exactly what is it? Please ask the real Indiana Jones. Kara. Okay, well, so there you are.
Okay, the Grail legend is, it's built around some of the tales that the Knights Templar brought back from Jerusalem after they returned. And if you think about it, if Jesus did have a cup that he shared with the disciples there at the Passover dinner, meal before he was crucified, it would have been a simple cup, not a gold chalice and that kind of stuff, because they couldn't afford it. And, there are no mentions of it being like a fancy cup or anything like that. The real issue, the real Grail legend stems around Jesus himself being the cup of the blood.
Right.
And, his blood was shed from his body, the cup, and that's what saves the sins, or saves the sinners of this world. To find the Grail, the Holy Grail, it's really an incitement to find Jesus. And that's what it was really supposed to be, not an actual physical cup, but to find Jesus, who was the embodiment of the blood, the sacrifice. And that's, as far as I can find, you're not going to go turn over a rock somewhere and find a chalice of any description and say, oh, that's the one that they drank from at their Last Supper.
Okay. And now, personally, I've heard some. In fact, I listened to one. I'll call it a lecture. It was more of a presentation. In suggesting the Holy Grail was a reference to Mary Magdalene in the. Yeah, I'm going to stop there. Any comments on that? Have you heard that?
It's they used the translation to say sangreal, meaning the holy bloodline passing through Mary,
right.
And then that she and Jesus lived, he got off the cross and he lived with her in France, and I don't believe that rubbish. But yeah, the Sangreal, the holy blood, is supposed to talk about Jesus, and the Marian legends around that are, in my opinion, fictional.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, a lot of curious people out there, especially when it comes to the things like the Ark of the Covenant and things that we're talking about. Hopefully that. So that one question was from 2 weeks ago, and then this one.
I have a question, Stan, and this is just to hear your opinion on something. The administration handing over the authority of the internet.
Oh yeah.
To an international body of regulators. I don't know if you've had any time to read anything about this or have heard about it before, but if you have, what do you think?
How's that going to affect us?
Yeah, what could they do here? Why would they do this?
Everything is being handed over to a central authority to get ready for the one world dictatorship or government. In September of this year, there's going to be the 70th convening, I think it is, the 70th convening of the United Nations, and the Security Council changes the president every month. And in September of this year, the president of the United Nations Security Council is going to be a Russian. The Russian Federation will have that chair. And the Security Council is set up, get this, its charter is to ensure peace and security on the planet. That's peace and safety, just like the Bible says. Now, the internet thing, that's headed toward that one world government. Israel is going to be, in a very, very tight spot because Obama is threatening to side with France at the Security Council meeting in September and say there will be a two-state solution. We'll make Palestine, a separate country, and Israel will take more of your property. Now, this may happen, behind the scenes before then, but the treaty and the enforcement of it by the United Nations will occur at a meeting in September, I'm pretty sure. It's interesting. September 23rd is the 23rd of 2018 was the Shemitah period of time as well, the 28th of September. So all this stuff is moving us toward a one world currency, one world law, one world communication system controlled, of course, by the United Nations or the new superstructure, whatever they're going to call it. And I don't want to be here. I'm positive that the church will be removed to a place with the Lord before that time. And, there are going to be people that will kick up a storm and say the rapture doesn't occur or the rapture occurs mid-trib or post-trib. But, we are not given over to that. There are so many things that point to it. Even I heard a discussion here a couple of years back on the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible in Hebrew, how they point to a rapture, a removal of the bride before the tribulations start. It's too long a discussion to go into here, but this is what we're headed for. This year is a pivotal year in so many ways. I mean, I don't have to tell you that. You can see it in the headlines of the news if you watch it. And look, with the trumpets, with the earthquakes, the volcanoes. And by the way, I need to thank Kim that listens to your show. She sends me a lot of updates on the earthquakes. And she just sent me some here of earthquakes in the Canaries, which, of course, is where the Cumbre de Vieja volcano is that we have to worry about with all the landslide that might come off and form a tidal wave over to the eastern coast of the United States. And there was a Richter, what was it, a 5, something like that, about 50 miles northwest of the Cumbre de Vieja, but not on the island itself. So it hasn't shaken loose the thing, or we'd know about it. But anyway, Ken, thank you for that. And I did put up images on the show images page of what you were talking about and showing the earthquake down near the pole, South Pole, and around the Canaries. And there's also activity in the Juan de Fuca plate, which is in one of the images there, over the last 7 days, showing where the plate is being weakened. So thank you for keeping me updated, Kim. You're a trooper. Now, as far as the internet control, I just don't think we have to worry about it, because I don't think that we're going to be here. Those that are here are going to be totally under the thumb of the administration, because everything is going to go digital, and we'll have to have digital IDs, those people that are here, and I just don't think that the bride, the believers, will have to endure that. It's interesting, too, about the earthquakes when I think about it. Suppose we do have a Richter 8 or 9 earthquake on, let's say it does happen on the west coast of the United States somewhere. That might shake the whole planet again, like the other one did over in Sumatra back in 2004. It is interesting that when Jesus died on the cross, the earthquake that occurred shook the ground and opened the graves, and the saints came up alive out of the graves and walked the streets of Jerusalem until Jesus went, caught up, and they disappeared with him. Is it going to happen like that now, and huge earthquake activity here, and the graves will open, the dead shall rise first, and we'll see them, and then the rapture occurs? I mean, that's kind of the way it looks like in Thessalonians, 2 Thessalonians.
Well,
interesting thought, isn't it?
It is, and I wanted to, you mentioned it last week, and I wanted to just briefly get an idea, ask you a question about the rapture. It is a decisive issue, and I know
Divisive.
I'm sorry. And I know you've clarified this and talked about this on the show before, and we know we're not appointed to the Lord's wrath, but there is Satan's wrath also. Let's say that things started to happen, and the church or bride wasn't taken away. I mean, I see a train of people or a sect of people who hinge everything on that, to the point where if it didn't happen the way they thought it or think it's going to happen, that it would rock their faith, and almost it would be like almost they lose their faith.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Feeling forsaken.
I absolutely agree with that.
We're told we don't know the time, we don't know the day, the hour, we don't have an idea, but I mean, what if we started to see this? I guess if we would say it officially, the tribulation period started and the church was still here. Is this why we continue to prepare? I mean, what would you, Stan, with your vast knowledge and studying of Scripture, say to believers who are depending on a rapture, and we'll just say it doesn't happen in the time frame they think it will? Obviously, the Lord's going to take those who are His before His wrath pours out. But
yeah, I mean, the distinction between God's wrath and Satan's wrath. Go ahead.
Here's the thing: the parable of the 10 virgins, the 5 wise and 5 foolish. The 5 foolish ones, didn't stock their lamps with enough oil, which in a lot of cases in the Bible means like the Spirit. They didn't prepare, though. The 5 wise virgins prepared with the Spirit and with enough oil physically to keep their lamps lit and keep looking for the approach of the groom, or of Jesus. So that tells me that there are 2 groups of Christian believers in this age. There are those who think, okay, the rapture is going to come at the beginning, and so we don't have to do anything because we'll just get raptured out of here, at the beginning of the tribulation period. There are others who say, look, we think we understand this. We may not be raptured at the time, should the Lord tarry a bit, delay, in our opinion. So we better have preparations made to endure outside of the system until He does come. So you have oil for your lamp, electricity or whatever you're using. You have food stuff put aside so that you can function and wait for Him to come, when those around you that were thinking, okay, we're going to get raptured, lose their faith and fall away. The faith, the Spirit is not in them, and that's the falling away as part of what's happening now. So that's what I say to people. Look, Holly and I aren't saying, okay, we're going to just stop and sit on a hill and wait for it to happen. We're not going to prepare. We did prepare. We do prepare. And we know that translations, the way that the translations of the New Testament, Old Testament are, that there are people that can argue both sides whether the rapture occurs at all or whether it does occur at the beginning or the middle of the tribulation. And our view is not to argue with our brothers and sisters about it. We pray that it does happen at the beginning of the tribulation period, but if it doesn't, we've prepared ourselves to take care of that situation as best we can. The rest we leave up to the good Lord. That's why she wrote the Dare to Prepare book. It's 600 or 32 pages, I think it is, of stuff to do to prepare things that people need to know. Not everything that you need to know, but a great deal of it to endure.
Well, that was my question. Stan, what a wonderful book Holly wrote, Dare to Prepare, and having written that to me that always meant that we're gonna have to endure the tribulation, not God's wrath, but Satan's wrath, and we're gonna have to be able to be prepared for that, for the tribulation.
Of course, not a choice. We'd like to.
Yeah, I mean, given the option, yeah, of course, everyone wants to not be here, but that's kind of I'm thinking. Okay, why would looking at it practically, why prepare if you're thinking, well, I'm going to be out of here. But what you're saying is, I'm not exactly clear. What you're saying is
he's saying that his hope is in the rapture, yet he's going to continue to live out and walk out his Christian faith regardless of what happens on earth until the Lord takes him, whenever that may be.
Okay.
Is hearing correctly?
Yeah. Is that right? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Look, in the traditional Hebrew wedding courtship and ceremony before the wedding, the bride to be is at home with her parents and with her maidservants that are going to be part of the ceremony. They have from 10 minutes to a year after the deal is made between the groom and her father. She has, and her handmaidens have, from that moment until a year passes, anywhere in there, for the groom to come back with his friends and have his friends go into her father's home and sweep her off her feet and out into the wedding ceremony. And this is, a well-known historical fact in the Jewish community. You'd read it in a number of places. And that the bride would have to stay up, dressed, ready to go to a wedding party until midnight every night. And she would have her candle in the window of her home to let the groom and the groom's friends who are going to come get her know that she is ready that night. If it's not that night, the next night. But it will happen sometime within that year period. And that tells you to endure, to wait until God tells his son Jesus to come and get his bride. And even Jesus, technically speaking, is not supposed to know that until the Creator says, okay, now go get your bride. That's telling you, be prepared to endure for that little period, a little window of time. And it may be that it's within a year of the beginning of the tribulation that you're waiting, and sometime during that period of time, the surprise will take place. I mean, in the Thessalonians, he's saying to the people, he says, look, why do you think you've been left behind? The rapture's already taken place. Has the man of sin been revealed yet? And, the man of sin, they haven't seen him revealed yet, and we may not even see him revealed. It may happen after the church goes up. You see, there's a number of ways to interpret this. So the safe way is to be prepared and have all your provisions you need.
Yeah.
To endure.
Frankly, and I've looked at this, and our position, my position anyway, is the fact that we're going to have to endure the tribulation, be prepared for that, and then of course, I'm of the opinion, and this is me, based on my understanding of the Scripture, which is minimal compared to so many other scriptorians, is that I'll tell you, we're going to have, as Christians, we're going to have to endure that tribulation, and then prior to God's wrath, be taken away. Now, again, that's my interpretation based on the scriptorians that I listen to and respect. However, again, it's such a divisive issue. It's something that man, I can
people
just
see
see
it as
people.
black and white, but yet there's many things that are in Scripture, especially Revelation. You have the 144,000. You have the tribulation saints. You have.
But
aside
from all that, though, aside from all that, I can see people losing, faith, by saying, "Man, I thought we'd be out of here by now," and here we're running in caves and running away from all the trouble. So that's kind of what
we're told that all who believe in the Lord will suffer persecution. We're told that people who are followers and believers in Jesus and who walk that out will be oppressed and persecuted, and to prepare for that persecution and to take our cross up just like the Lord did. Does that mean you couldn't? The Lord's not going to take you out of here before the wrath comes. There's are many levels of persecution and oppression, and we hear all the time. Well, what about the people in the Middle East? Where's their relief? Being poor and starving all their life now, being persecuted for their faith. And the Lord has His ways and His reasons, and I like to just stay in prayer and do what I'm called to do, and in doing so, that's my walk with the Lord, and what He'll have me do, put through, or bless me with. That's up to Him, and that's His will, and His will is the supreme will. And I just think people need to focus more on, instead of doctrinal issues that have no basis on salvation, that they need to focus to make sure they're in line with His will, and then you can start to branch out into these other things. But and I'm not talking about you, Stan. I'm talking about people who make it one way or the other, and if you don't agree with that way, then you don't believe correctly. And like we say, it's an issue that causes division instead of joy, knowing that either way the Lord will and has promised to take us out of here, but people just can't agree on the time. So missing the most important part, that He will take us out of here. We just don't know when.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, look, you don't want to declare yourself, the absolute authority on the translations of these things that affect a decision about the rapture, because in the studies that I've done in the ancient languages, I can see so many ways that things could have been misinterpreted, and probably were, in a number of verses that people quote, that I simply hope for the best, pray for the best, okay, and prepare for the worst. The duration, and I won't argue with anybody. I mean, if somebody says we're going to go through first 3.5 years, okay, fine. We prepare as best we can, and we encourage others to do that. But pray for the best.
Interesting.
Amen. And once again, we're at the end of our hour, spilled over, and we do so much appreciate your time, and we do appreciate the work that you put in and your insight, as it is always a unique perspective with the scientific knowledge you have mixed with the biblical understanding you have, makes a dangerous combination for those trying to convolute certain issues, and we do appreciate.
Got to mull over that Ark of the Covenant issue, though. Got to mull that over with respect to the. I got to think about this. That
TV
question
shows,
is really.
They believe they're still buried in Ethiopia. I think there's a verse in the Bible that says it was taken up to heaven. It is an interesting issue, and it has such a unique history. And
I'm going to forward you that email from. I think it was from Kara that about the Ark of the Covenant, because I think there's a lot more in there too that she's got. Very interesting. Yeah.
Very I think the last reported sighting of it wasn't during when Jeremiah took it. Nebuchadnezzar let him take it up to the mountain and hide it. Wasn't that the last reported sighting of it?
I don't know. I don't know. I know. What was it? Graham Hancock wrote The Sign and the Seal. Didn't he place that in Ethiopia? I'm going back now.
I don't know.
A number of years.
If you did or not, I haven't read that, but I do know that there are letters that say that it was over into Aksum there in Ethiopia, or on the edge of it in Eritrea, where they have got it in a church. It was in a lecture that I gave last year, I think it is. But wherever it is, the real one, in God's time, it will resurface.
Yeah, interesting. All right. Thanks, Dan.
Well, God bless you and Holly, and until next week, God willing, we will be back again.
Absolutely, Lord willing. Bless you guys. Night now. Thanks,
Dan. Enjoy the rest of your evening. StanDeyo.com. StanDeyo.com is the website. Bookmark that, as there is always new, updated, important information on there. And we will be back right after these short messages. You're listening to the Hagmann Hagmann Report on this, the 19th day of May, a Tuesday, 2015. We'll be right back with your calls. So if you want to weigh in, give us a call at 661-244-9839. And if nobody calls, we'll call you, or maybe news. But no, we have callers on hold now. So.
Yeah, actually, we do.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our third and final half hour, as we ran over time with Stan Deyo, as we usually do.
So the Ark of the Covenant, Joe. I
All right, I'll explain.
No, I got to tell you something.
I have it.
Yeah,
okay?
I know you do.
I have it. I buried it a long time ago, and I have it. And
that question actually was, a couple of weeks old, and I thought, what an interesting question that is.
And one thing that gets me about that is, for the longest time, since I can ever remember, people have done TV shows and written books, and the Ark of the Covenant is one of the many, the Spear of Destiny, the Noah's Ark, of these religious artifacts that people have searched for forever and have never been able to uncover them. Not that they're not there to uncover or whatever the reason, but they are interesting, thought-provoking things that people have been searching for when, and if they find them, I don't know if they will. I think these are things that, if they are to be discovered, it would have to be at a time of the end, because say the Ark was discovered tomorrow, would anybody start believing in God because of that? But
so that's an interesting question.
Say there was turmoil and
it would
chaos
validate the Bible,
and it would have to be the time where people were falling away left and right, I would imagine, and people were starting to doubt if the Lord was real, and something like that was actually discovered, how that would bring their belief back to a point where they got reacquainted with the Lord again. I mean, I don't know, but it is definitely something that is interesting and needs to be talked about. Can be.
I just got an email here from a fast email here. From Charles. Charles, to answer your question, direct question. Hey, Doug, what do you believe with respect to the rapture? My simple answer to that is this. Okay, I believe, and Pastor David Langford has spoken about this many times. Steve Quayle has spoken about this many times. I personally believe exactly what they have said. Okay, this is my personal belief, and I would urge. I believe that they're right on the money. I believe in what Pastor David Langford has said based on his scriptorian research as a scriptorian and as pastor, and I believe that what Steve said with respect to the. Now, Joe, correct me. Make sure I'm correct on this language here. Pre-wrath, right?
Right, you have the tribulation period, which is Satan's wrath, and then the Lord's wrath follows that.
Right.
And the scriptures do say that, for we are not ordained to the Lord's wrath.
Right. So, Charles...
But at the same time, it says we are to expect to be oppressed and suffer persecution in all who believe and live a godly life.
That's correct.
And that doesn't mean it has to be the end of the world. I mean, the people being slaughtered for their Christian faith in the Middle East, if we lived over there, we would be thinking it's a tribulation.
Well, yeah, a tribulation, small t, tribulation with a capital T. But bottom line is that's my personal belief based on my studies and my limited understanding. When I say limited understanding, I'm talking about relative to, I defer that to Pastor Langford. I really do. He's the most knowledgeable man I know with respect to the Scripture, and Steve Quayle, who is him and Pastor Langford both have done a lot of research in this. Now that's me, and I would, and I'll tell you one thing, I'm convinced of that. But having said that, the other aspect of that, Charles, is that going to change how you're living today? See, that's Charles, is that going to change how you're living today? That's my thought. Let's go to the phones.
All right. Let's go first to area code.
No, let me add this. Is that going to change your spiritual life? In other words, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And, yeah, no. Are you going to, no, that's not going to change your spiritual life. Or it shouldn't, anyway. Go ahead.
Area code international caller. How about that? International caller, we're coming to you first. You're live on the Hagmann Hagmann Report. What's on your mind tonight? International caller? That's you.
Hello?
Yes,
That's
go
me.
ahead. Yep.
Hi, how you doing? I just love to speculate when they talk about all these underground, bunkers that are being made, and in the Bible it says they're going to wish the rocks fell on them. I just wonder if it's maybe the people that find out that they have these that go in there and take care of these guys, or if the demons that are let loose from hell that come out, because they'll be like trapped like rats down in there.
That's an interesting. That's very interesting. You hear about these deep underground military bases, and
right.
To me, especially with the Earth changes that we see. Hey, the other day I was driving down the street and I see this. Now, this is a street I drove on like earlier in the day coming back, and I see these orange cones around this huge area, and it's probably sunken down about 3 feet. And I'm thinking to myself, man, I certainly wouldn't want to be like underneath the ground. In any, regardless of the reinforcement. But anyway, that's just me. Yeah. So you're very interesting point. That. But
then Steve Quayle talks about the gates of hell opening up and demons coming out. And I don't know if I'd want to be here when all these demons come out, but I just wonder if we're going to have a lot of target practice.
You're going to shoot the demons?
Well, I think we've got a lot of spiritual power over demons. I mean,
that's the power that we do have over them is their authority in the Lord.
There you go.
Take care.
That's
of it.
the way to say it. Yeah,
that's spiritual armor, because target practicing with demons, you're not going to have holes left to find out if you were accurate or not. I wouldn't think.
I don't know. I mean, if they're going to come through our dimension, then they're going to be limited to what our dimension is. They're not going to be.
I don't know.
Well,
wait a second. That came from heaven and mated with women.
Hold on. If you go to I'm going to cite Genesis 6 Giants, the second edition, by Steve Quayle. The definition: Nephilim, the fallen angels, the Rephaim, the hybrid of the Nephilim and the women, earthly women, and then the demons, which are disembodied spirits of the Rephaim. This, according to Genesis 6 Giants, the second edition. So, does that mean now, if a demon inhabits a body, a vessel, a human vessel, you shoot the vessel, what happens to the demon?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, yeah, good question. I mean, that's something for Steve to answer, and I defer to him with respect to that question. But target practice, I don't know. But the blood of Jesus will, I'd much rather rely on that than a 357.
Exactly. All right. Well, have a great night.
All right.
Thanks for the call.
You're welcome.
All right, moving right along. We're going to go to 772 next. 772, you're live on the Hagmann Hagmann Report.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Hey, what's up?
Hi. I was just thinking, I'm kind of off topic like your previous caller, but I was thinking about our military. And when the military was first formed, it was because you had men that loved this country. And that has turned into a career now. So, it makes me wonder, will they actually shoot at the American people?
Well, Dave Hodges had written about that. And the figures that he, in one of his recent articles, he cited a study done about American people shooting and about American, or not American people, but the military, and siding with whom siding with whom, the Air Force and Marines and such. Frankly, I think that's probably why we're seeing a buildup of NATO or UN troops who are away from, man, although judging by today's military, the super soldier program is spoken by Russ Dizdar. I don't know.
Yeah, it's something, I've thought about because, it's no longer, well, I'm not going to say it's not love for country, but I think the majority is their careers. They've served so many years in the military, they don't want to lose that time, but the founding of this country, when the military was formed, it was because they loved the country and they wanted to protect the country and our allies. And, of course, along with all the injections they've gotten, who knows what kind of shape their minds are in.
Yeah, and I think that the military of today is quite different than the military of, I'll even say, certainly different than the military of 10 years ago and way different than the military of the time of World War II and before. So, yeah.
Right.
I don't know.
That crossed my mind. It's just amazing to watch the whole thing. I was looking at the InfoWars the report the other night, and the guys were talking about, the different things that were going on with the military, and then they had these high-ranking officers. He doesn't know anything about Jade Ham. He hasn't heard about it. I'm like, you kidding me?
Do you believe it?
Are you kidding me? You haven't heard any? No, I absolutely don't believe it, because if something goes down in Texas or Arizona or Utah, of course the military is going to have to converge and, try to straighten out whatever. So there's no way I will believe a high-ranking officer doesn't know anything about Jade Ham, has not heard about it, hasn't got the memo.
I agree with you. I would have to question that, because I think by now the cat's out of the bag, and perhaps that explanation might have flown a few months ago, back in early April, but not now. Not now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a private maybe not everything, but a high-ranking officer, yeah, he knows.
Yeah, I totally agree. Wow.
So that's all I
interesting.
Want you guys have a blessed night. All right.
You too. God bless you. Thank you for the call.
You're welcome.
All right. Have a good night.
Great calls. Great. I love our audience, man. I'm telling you.
Let's go to another caller. 270. You're up next. You're live on the Hagmann Hagmann Report.
Yeah, hello.
Hey.
Hi. Yes,
What's on your mind?
I was going to go with Joe on this one. He's good at looking up Bible verses. And I was going to go to Matthew chapter 27, verse 52, and get his take on that.
I'm sorry, Matthew 27:52?
Yes.
1 second. Matthew 27:52.
Yeah, it's a little difficult.
All right.
We're here. Go ahead. Okay.
It says this, and the graves were opened, and many bodies of the saints which slept arose. Now, let's put this into context here. Okay, Jesus, when he had cried again with a loud voice, yielded up the ghost. And behold, the veil of the temple was rent in twain from top to bottom, and the earth did quake, and the rocks rent, and the graves were... Okay, I know what this is talking about. It's what the first fruits after the death and resurrection of Jesus. Jesus died, went down into hell with the keys to open the bottomless pit, and when he was resurrected into heaven, he brought with him the first fruits, or all those of his who believed on him, from Abel up until those who were there when he died and was resurrected. Those first fruits were the dead in Christ who died before the Lord took keys and control over death. And when he later appeared to his disciples in private as a spiritual being, he had Moses with him also. And these disciples saw that.
Yeah, but it says they came out of the graves after his resurrection and went into the holy city.
The holy city, which appeared unto many.
Appeared unto many. I'm thinking they that was the first resurrection, and they appeared in heaven unto many. I'm thinking myself. My opinion. I'm thinking that was the first resurrection, and that could have been the 144,000.
It definitely could have been the 144,000.
It don't say how many. It's many.
No, I'd have to go back to Revelation.
Were open. The graves were open in many bodies.
Yeah, but Joe, let me just say this. One thing Pastor Langford has taught me is, there's scripture, one scripture. There's consistency among scriptures. In other words, passage. There's that would relate to another scripture. So,
right.
You know what I'm saying? There would be some conformity and support for that particular scripture, and I think that's at least in my bailiwick here. It's beyond what I understand. And Joe, I mean, if you want to get into that, that's up to you. But certainly, Pastor Langford is the one to ask on that.
Right. Okay, maybe I can call back when you got him on.
Yeah. In fact, would love to have him on and answer questions like that, because he's I'm telling you, man, I've never met a man as studious with respect to the scriptures as Pastor Langford. So,
okay.
All right, appreciate
Thanks,
that.
Doug. Joe,
right,
appreciate your time, sir.
Absolutely, great question. Thanks for the call.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night.
And that's one thing, Joe, that when I look at when I read the Bible, I look at I realize how little I know. As I read, I mean, I'm learning a lot when I read. I'm learning more and more as I go. But still, when you've got 20, 30 years as a minister that spends hours upon hours a day in the Bible and the Word, you've got to yield to that expertise and that level of understanding. That's my view.
Well, yeah, the Word is the interpreter of the Word, and Pastor Langford's mind is filled with the Word.
Man,
no, he does have. He knows the Bible so well.
Yeah, he does. I mean, it's the Bible speaks for itself. However, but the understanding. It's like a teacher. Teach me.
Yeah, and just reading in the rest of Matthew in 28. The last chapter and the last two verses talk about what Jesus said to the disciples after they saw he was resurrected, and he says, "All power is given unto me in heaven and in earth. Go ye therefore and teach all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Ghost, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world."
Yeah.
And that promise still stands today, as much as this world seems like it is void of anything good. But we need to remember that.
We had a Robert. It's only fair we have a Roberta asking this question about Islam and about the Trinity. Just to be very concise with our answer to Roberta, Islam does not believe in the divinity of Jesus Christ. Okay,
can you repeat that?
Yeah, Roberta asks about the Islam and Jesus. Roberta says, well, Islam believes In Jesus, yes,
as a
but
prophet.
not right, but not in the divinity, not as the Son of God.
They believe that he was ordained by God, but they do not. They don't give him the correct, proper authority and worship. But he is the Lord, who
he's
was
God incarnate, in the flesh. Yes. Yeah.
He was not a prophet, but at least unlike the secular world, who refused many to even believe he existed, or was some kind of magician of ahead of his time.
I never understood that at all.
The Muslim religion, and I guess not to give them credit, but at least they recognized that Jesus was not just a man, but he was
a prophet, according to the Islamic religion, but
which is more credit than
atheists would give him, or not atheists, but
atheists, secular people. It's
right.
Either way, but
so Roberta, there you go. Hopefully that answers your question. And there's Islam does not
talk about Jesus on TV, and usually it's an expletive while referring to the Prophet Muhammad. But
and that's interesting too, the way the news media it characterizes or references. They say the Holy Quran versus the Holy Bible. I mean, they say the Bible, but not the Holy Bible. They say the Holy Quran, and then the Prophet Muhammad all the time. But so anyway, that's off on a tangent.
626 area code. We're coming to you now. You're live on the Hagmann Hagmann Report. Thanks for holding.
Hello?
Yes.
Hi. Yeah, I finally got through. Hello, how are you?
Very well.
I've been trying to get through for some time. There were so many things that I wanted to say, but I think the primary thing I wanted to say was something my husband and I saw a few months ago in December. We were driving home, and we live here in Southern California, and it was really on the freeway coming home from Christmas shopping, and we saw maybe at least several dozen Muslims just walking on an overpass. There's like a bridge where you can drive over and walk over. And they were carrying flags. I mean, the huge black flag that you see in the Middle East.
No,
it was
really?
Yes.
Wait, where is this? Because I think I heard about this.
This was in San Dimas. I live
in Southern California.
I heard
in Southern California. Yes, and I'm sorry that I didn't call you guys sooner to tell you this. It was just we were on the freeway. We're going at least about 60 miles an hour or whatever, and to look up and see this site, I wanted to take a picture, but I didn't even have time. But yeah. And that's obviously, from what I understand, a sign of declaring jihad,
Well, of course, yeah. Okay, roughly when was this? What time of day? How many? How were they dressed?
This was in the second Saturday of December. Or no, I'm sorry, the first Saturday of December. It was like that weekend after Thanksgiving.
All right.
And this was in the middle of the afternoon. It was like maybe between 2 and 3 o'clock.
All right.
During the 2 o'clock hour or so, yeah.
Okay.
And it was in San Dimas, right by, I think it's called the Frank G. Bonelli, there's a recreational center, or a park, actually. Yeah, and it was interesting.
Can you spell that park for me?
Oh, I think it's B-O-N-E. Oh, shoot. Frank G. Bonelli. B-O-N-E-L-L-I.
Okay, thanks. That's close enough. Okay. Because we want to research this. But how many were there, and how were they dressed?
They were dressed in, kind of regular clothing, I believe. Most of them. I don't know, kind of. It seemed like casual clothing to me. Okay. I mean, I was pretty awestruck by the flag. That flag was so huge. It was like the kind of flag you'd see flying at a stadium. You know what I mean? Like that big, black, with the Arabic writing. And then another person had one of those green flags. And, you know, I mean, it happened so fast. We look up, my husband's like, going on? You know, we're driving so fast, and we just saw this. And I turned around and looked back, and I was like, I knew right away what that means, you know.
Well,
and it's pretty close to where I live.
Yeah, that would be a rather wow. That would be upsetting. Do you have to get that?
Oh no, Los Angeles.
Oh no, I don't.
Okay.
That's okay.
All right. Yeah, that would certainly make me do a double take and probably have to turn around to find out what's going on. Joe, you said you heard about that.
I did hear on a forum, and there's also lots of a few bridges in southern Texas and California that have Allah Akbar and other ISIS graffiti that have been spray painted on these overpasses.
Yeah, Muslim graffiti.
Oh, that I haven't seen, but it was interesting because about 2 months prior to that, Obama was here, and he was he gave a speech at that same recreational park because I think he was declaring the local mountains here to be federal land or something. And so I just thought it was odd, you know, he's there, and then 2 months later, I see all this. I don't know if there's any relation. It was just weird that it's at the exact same area.
Well, in 2004, and I mentioned this in St. Louis, in 2004, when Steve and I were writing together, we had mentioned, or we had referenced a news story where there was a group of Muslims who actually had an Al-Qaeda flag, but they had a cache of weapons, and they said, we're just waiting for the time, for the call to do jihad here in the United States. And people scoffed at that. You know, people said, no, that's not going to happen here. But the numbers are rapidly switching. The demographics are increasing. So man.
Yeah, my husband is a retired police officer, and you know, so he's very observant of things. And he was like, where did all these guys come from? Like, where do they live at? You know, it was just so out of the ordinary. It was bizarre.
Yeah. We have it marked down here. We're definitely gonna follow up on this to see what we can come up with. If there was, I mean, they weren't marching in a parade. They were just walking. It was
a big group of them walking. Yes, like they occupied that whole overpass bridge. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay.
So it was enough to fill that bridge.
I'd be interested to hear from anyone else, if any other parts of the country.
I mean, if anybody more, I'm sure somebody who saw that had to call authorities. If
you would
it looked that troubling or suspicious.
Yeah, I watched the local news that night, like at least 2 stations, and I didn't see any stories about it. So,
okay, well,
I don't know if anybody did anything.
We're appealing to anyone in your area. The Saturday after Thanksgiving in the afternoon, roughly a group of Muslims carrying a black flag as well as a green flag, casually dressed. If you saw that, or anywhere else, if you saw that, let us know, and we'll put this together the best we can.
And just real quickly, in my neighborhood, there's a Greek Orthodox church.
Yes.
Really nice, you know. And after the 21 Christians that were beheaded, and I thought this was just great, they put up a big banner, you know, and it had a picture of all the ones before they were martyred, and with all their names. It was like they had like a little makeshift memorial to them. So I just thought that was, that's exactly what I said.
You know, and this is going to be happening more and more and more, the persecution of Christians in the Middle East, and of course, you know, in the satellite countries as well, and it's coming here too, and people don't quite get that. It's already happening here, but it's just not being, the crimes against Christians are increasing. The persecution of Christians are increasing.
Right. Well, I thought that was a pretty bold march. I mean, that kind of shook me up a little bit,
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't blame you. This is the first I heard about it. Joe, you can go ahead and check your notes and after the show, and we'll keep you posted on what we find out. But thank you for letting us know about that.
Okay, well, thank you. You have a good night.
All right. God bless. Wow.
God bless you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Why don't we hear about this stuff on mainstream media? Why don't we hear about this on I mean,
if I have to answer that for you, you need
no,
to.
Well, no, maybe I missed this on the alternative media, but what was their purpose? And
free speech, advocating freedom of expression.
Well, it's interesting because you've got you have Madonna, screaming in jubilee that you've got a black Muslim in the White House here in a recent performance, or not a recent, but a performance. You've got those are her words, not mine, folks. You've got this Islamic Muslim Brotherhood terrorist organization that has infiltrated throughout the government, and of course, the purging of the military of the Christians. Look at the big picture and see what's taking place, and then of course, reports like this. You think this would be the last march like that? Probably not, or the last showing of force like that? Probably not.
We only have a few minutes left of the show.
I'm interested too. People hearing the first hour of the program about the TPP and about the serious nature of this, and I think that we'd like to get your take on it as well.
And we just scratched the surface. I have UN documents I got to pour through, but just I guess if there was going to be a headline, and there will be a report with a headline very shortly, but TPP finalizes globalization under UN Charter, one world government. Welcome to it.
There it is. Yeah. Folks, until tomorrow, God bless. Stay safe. We're at the end of the program. Wow. Just
keep your show.
Yeah, you've got to, and folks, please understand the severity, the intensity, the intensity of this TPP and the mechanism that the TPP is. This is really the story and the collateral, the satellites to the TPP.
Tomorrow, G. Edward Griffin. Thursday, Dr. Ted Breuer, and not finalized, but possibly Paul McGuire Friday.
Wow.
So until then, until tomorrow, stay safe, God bless, and have a great evening.
Night.